Today is 11 May 2025. I'll talk about a brief chronology before I get you back to this date. I have previously recorded two sessions on the topic, the prophecy of the popes. This is my third session. The first one was about 10 years back. It was the time when Pope Francis had assumed office and he was, 2 years into his office. And then, as we all know, 21 April 2025, he died. And on 22 April 2025, I recorded my second session. It was within a few hours, within a day, within a few hours, but the timestamp you will see 22 April 2025 because it was past midnight by the time I had recorded the session in India. This is 11th May. So after that, it was announced that the conclave, the papal conclave, will convene on 7 May 2025, and we had the black smoke. So they had to reconvene the following day, 8 May 2025, and we have on that day Cardinal Robert Prevost being elected as the new pope, the next pope, Leo the 14th. I was waiting for the weekend to record this session, which is the third in connection to the same topic, the prophecy of the popes. I will not be repeating the contents of my previous two lectures, previous two sessions. You can watch that. And I leave the description, the links of those two lectures in the description of this session. You can have a look at that. I'll continue with some insights because eschatology happens to be an interest area of mine. I delve into eschatology, primarily Islamic eschatology, but also Christian, Jewish, Hindu, and other eschatology and topics around it. Okay, so far so good. So I'll not talk about in details that you can already have a look. I'll talk about the difficulty which researchers, commentators, and interpreters had in dealing with this prophecy, because it seems that from numbers 1 to 111, the motto matched the Pope in office. And then there was a motto which was not numbered. And then there was number 112, 112, and we had Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. So up to 111, it matched with Pope Benedict, right? So this created some confusion. So what was assumed by some interpreters was, eschatological interpreters was, primarily Christian interpreters was, that Pope Francis is the last Pope, that he being the 112th, 112, because that's how where the number stops. Now that he has died and we have a new Pope, how do we interpret? And I had said at that time that we may have to relook at this, and I'll do a recording of, I'll come up with an analysis of the same once the new Pope is elected, and here I am. So we have a new Pope, Cardinal Robert Prevost. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, and that name Francis is important for our analysis. I'll keep this session short, by the way. So when Pope Francis was still alive, there was a huge attempt to force fit him into the prophecy. And there were various connections. I'm not going to spoon feed you in this session. For that, you'll have to do some homework. And for your ease, you can revisit my two lectures and some of the other contents that you may have access to. That's absolutely fine as well. So one of the connections, okay, so we need to build a history. Now, Peter, Paul, Francis, we'll talk about these three names. Peter is Simon Peter, by the way, referred to as Saint Peter, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. And in many ways, the apostolic mission, as hinted in the Bible, seems to have started with him, referred to as Saint Peter otherwise, right? And then we have Paul a few years later, and Paul has contributions, especially in the doctrine. We're not talking about Christian theology today, right or wrong, we'll not go into that analysis. And then we have a person by the name of St. Francis of Assisi, and Pope Francis assumed the name Francis inspired by him. And in many ways, his sort of office, uh, the way he conducted his mission, his papacy, was in a way reflection or an attempt to replicate the way St. Francis used to be during his time. That's interesting. Now he's passed away. How do we interpret all this? So I had said that among the contenders, one of the very strong contenders, and we all know about that, was Pietro Parolin. And if he were to be elected, then that possibly could have hinted at him being the last pope, hinted as Peter the Roman, right? But he has not been elected. What do we do now? There are two possible ways to look at this scenario. One is Robert Prevost, or Cardinal Robert Prevost, or Pope Leo the 14th, right? His middle name is Francis. The same way Pope Francis, his name was stretched to fit in the prophecy, can still hold good if that were to be the case. So the unnumbered is now coincides with Pope Francis, and now the same Francis connection I'm bringing it back. So 112 is Cardinal, Pope now, Pope Leo the 14th, otherwise previously Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost. That's an interesting observation. The second is that unnumbered can be a number of popes, not just one, before finally Peter the Roman comes as the 112th one. So up to Benedict, right, from 1 to 111, that remains. The unnumbered is either one or multiple, and then 112, Peter the Roman, could be Pietro Parolin, could be someone else, we'll have to wait and see, could even be, as I suggested, Robert Prevost, and how I gave you those connections, right? So this, I'll leave it at that. There is nothing more at this point of time that we can further deep dive into in this analysis. There's no way we can do that. So as I would like to reiterate, eschatology is a subject of interest to me. I primarily deal with Islamic eschatology, but I'm not limited to that. I also explore Christian, Jewish, Judeo-Christian, Hindu, and other eschatological sort of prophecies, you could say, right? So far, so good. It'll seem to be hanging, but that's what it is. So I have referenced Peter. So how every pope is sort of a successor to Saint Peter, Simon Peter, right? So in that sense, that can force fit with anyone. That would be too generic. Same way, Paul, okay, he was more of a missionary, and then Francis of Assisi and Pope Francis, and this Pope, Leo the 14th, his middle name being Francis, could be a fit in. And Pietro Parolin is still eligible to be elected the next Pope. Currently, that he was not elected does not disqualify him. That's not one of the disqualification criteria. So anything could happen. Obviously, we would, we focus our analysis on Islamic eschatology, fine, but we don't disregard, for the sake of disregarding, any of the other eschatological analysis. But this analysis per se is not a biblical one. It's not based on the Bible. It's based on what has been referred to as the prophecy of the popes of Saint Malachy, and that's it. So nothing more. So even among the Christians, as I've spoken about this in my previous two sessions as well, there is an ongoing debate whether this is a forgery, whether this is true. If it's true, what could be the source of his insight or vision or whatever. But that's interesting. The very fact that numbers 1 to 111 match is remarkable, and the difficulty lies in that unnumbered motto, and then 112, Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. So that's it for today's session. Short one, but interesting one. Interesting insights and observations. Nothing conclusive. There is nothing required at this point of time. these are open to interpretation, especially because these are not biblical prophecies. So that's what is whatever little I wanted to share with you all.